Here
Hey
we are.
Jess. Hi.
Hi, Mickey girl. I'm not
Yeah.
wearing, I feel like every time we get on a podcast, in fact, I feel like when you and I go out, when we see each other in LA, we're going to have to go shopping at Aviator Nation and buy more matching sweatshirts because I realize every time we're on a podcast, I'm wearing either the white or the blue version of that one, and I need to get some more. So now I just have this regular sweatshirt that's not as fun. But we're going to
Well,
get our logo on this one. This is the kind of
mm,
idea that I thought we'd put Strength Renewed right here. Very
I love
cute.
it. And in fact,
I
it
know.
is. I feel like Strength Renewed does have a little bit of inspiration from Aviator Nation with the
It
stripes.
does. It
So,
does. It
yeah. So,
does.
like a homage to. Is that
It's
the
a
word? A
homage.
homage to Aviator Nation.
Well, we're so cute. Remember, we could say you could say anything with your adorable accent. Like anything that I say won't be as cute as so you just say it and I'll say yes. That's cute. That's works. That's perfect.
Oh, I love it. So, Jess, I wanted to, we were chatting a little bit just before we jumped on
Hmm.
about weight loss resistance. And in fact, like, do you want to share just a like big picture about maybe one of your clients or whatever? And then we'll just kick off from there because I'll preface it by saying many people feel like they're doing everything they can and not losing weight. And therefore, they're then going to potentially more extreme approaches, which long term wouldn't do them any favors. So it's sort of, and there may be some basics that they're not even thinking about.
Which I think is so fantastic because I love the practicality of our approaches because
Mm,
again, you and I both kind of are like we try to take all the information that's swirling around and maybe just put it in a more manageable place to hold because I think
mm,
everybody's walking around trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with them or what they can
yeah.
do or how they and then there's almost an abundance of information and sometimes I will stick with the fact that sometimes I think that less is more. So I have a lot of clients that I work with that are, in their 40s and they're in that, I always say, in that wonderful stage of like, I could have another baby, like not probably purposely, but could, or I can potentially be in perimenopause or menopause. So it's like a very strange place, I think, for the human body to be in. And I think there are definitely some cases where I hear I am working out, I'm strength training, I'm trying to be mindful of my protein, although I'm not in their kitchen, so I have no idea what that actually means, but I think they're thinking about it. And you know, I think they'd like to say that the like scale is not budging, but I think for
Mm,
them it's less the number on the scale and it really is more about, the way they see themselves in Zoom and you know what I mean when they're on and when they're in a meeting or that their pants just don't feel comfortable when they're putting them on and that isn't fun for anybody and I get
no.
that. Um, and I think that after they feel like they've exhausted the possibilities of, like I guess they've done working out. They feel like that's a pretty solid. They have me as their coach. They're doing the resistance training. They are eating well, and now they're kind of looking for other potential things like, and none of them really even know that much about like. I mean, frankly, I'm still learning about what the patch means or what the percentages of like estrogen or progesterone or testosterone or now better yet now do I do metformin or do I do a GLP-1 inhibitor, like now we're having this other layer of conversation. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, kind of what I'm coming up against pretty regularly in my practice.
Yeah. And, there are very um, genuine reasons for when people can be resistant to weight loss
Mm-hmm.
that are the result of metabolic markers. Like thyroid function is diminished. You've got cortisol levels, an elevated level of cortisol that is causing, which is the stress hormone that can trigger fat storage, particularly around the middle. You've
Mm-hmm.
got maybe a level of metabolic adaptation because you've been dieting for so long that
Mm-hmm.
your body has turned the dimmer switch down on its physiology. And this is that topic in itself is a huge topic that we're not getting into today.
Okay.
And the reason why, well, like all of these things are important, nutrient deficiencies can lead to your body's energy metabolism being sort of dimmed down and this inability to create that calorie deficit. But what I want to bring it back to is actually just examining in more detail what eating well sort of looks like, and or not
Mm.
even eating well, but actually knowing where you're going wrong in your diet. Because I talk to a lot of people where they go to a particular place, like they're like, oh, I've just got to up my protein, or I've just got to skip breakfast, or they have in their head what's actually going wrong in their diet, but actually they've never properly tracked. They aren't aware of what's going in this 24-hour window, but they've just assumed something is wrong because they're hearing about it on social media. And which is
Yeah.
when you've got people going, I'm going to try this thing because it worked for this person, but they may be in a completely different physiological place to that person, so it's not going to have the same
Hmm.
effect.
There is 100% no, like I am, if I could nod my head, vigorously, even like more than I'm doing now, like it's 100% that, and I think you're totally right because we are a product of whatever the shiny object is in front of us at that moment. And
Yeah,
right now we are certainly being targeted with protein, which is fine, resistance training, um, uh, our hormones, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, so we're getting hit with these things. So immediately assume it's, you know, that one of those, but I think you're totally right. And then it's like, well, I think I'm eating enough protein, or I think, you know what I mean? Like that, it must be that, or right. So you're not, it's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Really don't, I think
yeah.
there's not a whole lot of like, there isn't really any real, plan. It just kind of feels a little bit like, I'm not sure what it is. So it must be this, you know?
Yes, and I think I think the very first thing someone needs to do is get sure about what it is. And
Uh-huh.
that is as simple as doing what you and I did with you that very first time, and take a journal, take a pen, start writing down what you're doing. You
Mm.
don't even really need to think about amounts at this point, but
Yeah.
first you just need an awareness of your food habits and behaviors,
Mm.
and maybe the timing with which you eat, because then you can start to draw some patterns and some trends. Like you might discover that, like in your head, you might be like, I'm not eating enough protein, which may very well be the case. But actually, when you sort of put it all down on paper, what you might find is that you're working out at 6 o'clock, you're eating breakfast at 11, and it's actually got plenty of protein in it for a meal that's breaking your fast. But every time you wait until 11, you end up binging at night. Whereas if you were to shift that to like 9 a.m., you could, you'll have a more robust appetite regulation signal that then might prevent that. So, it might just be a timing issue. It might be an amount issue. It might be that the timing between meals is too long, or we've got so much on our mind, might not be realizing of all the little things that are going in until you actually start writing them down. Like you're running through the kitchen, grabbing a couple of rice crackers or Quaker thins and dipping them in
Yeah.
cottage cheese or avocado and that kind of thing. So awareness is always going to be the first step, regardless of what we're talking
Okay.
about.
Well, that's good because that doesn't require us to do anything other than, which you remind me to do it again. I think that just because you do it one time, you keep a
Mm,
journal for a week or something, doesn't mean you can't return back to that practice. Like as I'm literally listening to you say this, I'm like, I should return back to that practice because all of these things are kind of like, I love to have this podcast because I realize I'm like I'm a perfect patient. I'm a perfect
yeah,
listener, because I'm like, yep, I definitely know that there's habits that are really connected to my eating or certain times of day that I feel more vulnerable, you know what I
mm-hmm,
mean, than others.
yeah,
Other parts of the day where I just almost allow myself to eat more haphazardly, you know what I
yeah,
mean? In some
yeah,
areas of the day, I'm actually more thoughtful about it.
yeah.
So awareness is great and to continually be aware. So keep your notepad by you and your pen.
And I also think like some people can feel a little bit frustrated that they have to do this work because they just want the answer. And I think this comes from this notion that diet should be easy because we all eat. So why should I have to put the work in? And I
Hmm.
really want people to move away from this idea that that you should find it easy. Why should you? Nothing else in life comes easy. Why would your
I know.
diet and your exercise be any different? I'm sorry, it just isn't. And the more that
Agreed.
you are actually more accepting of that, the easier it is going to be to get your brain moving in the direction that you
Hmm.
will actually work for it. And it's worth working for. And this is a conversation, this has been really striking me a lot lately about people's attitude to nutrition. And in fact, funny story, like I had someone contact me in my DMs, and he was like, I do this Enduro IQ course you taught on, and I did. And he's like, so we've got this connection. And I just have some questions about my diet. Like, when's a good time? Can we chat on the phone? And I'm like, oh, sure. Here's my calendar. Go book a consult. And then came back and said, I thought because we've got this connection, i.e., I did this course 5 years ago that he now then just did, that I could just call you. I don't really have a lot. I just want to sort of tweak a little bit of what I'm doing. And I said, yeah, but that's my job. People pay me to do what you're asking me to do for free. And it's sort of like asking your dental hygienist to
No.
clean your teeth after paying, without paying them. And I had to and the thing is, Jess, is that I feel this is part of it as well, is that because we all eat, why should we pay for the information of how to do it properly? This is a bit of the attitude, which is sort of, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, to be honest. This has stuck with me like an entire week. Just, and
Well,
my best.
it's an important it's because I always say that like what we're talking about is like the basis for preventative health care. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's right here. So if
yeah,
you really want to like really understand your body and you really want to understand your health, it starts right here. Like
yeah.
this is like the most important thing that you'll do, and it's the most important kind of piece to really be present on and to
Mm,
work at.
yeah, yeah.
Honestly, I'm
I
like,
know.
the other stuff is fine, but I'll say it, and you've said it a million times. I say it probably next to my gratitude practice. The other thing I say constantly is exactly what you kind of just alluded to, that when you're healthy, you can think about everything.
Yeah,
And when you're not healthy, you can think about nothing except to be healthy,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
So
100%.
there's never a day I don't repeat it over and over and over and over again because I'm
Yeah.
like, have to be reminded of that. But people are really funny. It's almost like they have a hierarchy of what they think is should be hard. There's that
Mm-hmm.
word, another word that I think is ridiculous. But, bringing it back to, why I can't lose weight, right? Doing these things, I think it starts with awareness. It starts with the pen. It starts with writing it down. What would be the next thing to sort of pay attention to?
Yeah. So the first thing is actually write it down and do it for a few days, and also
Mm-hmm.
pay attention, in addition to your diet, pay attention to your levels of stress
Mm,
and the amount of sleep you're getting, because these things impact on your food decisions
mm,
and the amount that you eat and how you feel. So these things are not, they're not in isolation. And so again, it's
mm-mm.
just a little bit of a further examination, but this groundwork is worth it, because you might be thinking, I'm a failure because I can't stick to this healthy diet I think I'm eating. I'm always going for the chocolate biscuits at 3 p.m. But it might actually just be that at 2 o'clock, you always get that reminder on your Google Calendar that you've got a meeting with your boss at 4 o'clock, and that might trigger you. Things like that can trigger a behavior because it's a bit of a distraction or a coping mechanism, and your mechanism is food. So, it might not actually be that you haven't had enough protein. It might actually be more related to these other sort of external things. So,
Mm-hmm.
I just really feel there's so much value in this free exercise that you do,
Called writing
um,
things down.
called writing things down, to be able to start to draw to draw a picture. And from there, that's when, because there's all this information out there on diet that people could absolutely utilize, but you don't know what's relevant to you until you've sort of brought it back here. So that is, I think that's definitely one of the first things to do, well before you head down the line of, I need to take this particular hormone supplement. That's going to help me. I'm going to have to, go on this peptide, or, go on this like glucose lowering medication or whatever.
It's hard, I think. I think it would have been easier if like you were in your 20s or 30s to
Mm,
be like, no problem, I'll do that. But I think it's harder to accept, like that to me seems really straightforward and easy, but there's this lingering thing in the back of my head that like, are all these symptoms of perimenopause going to happen to me? And if so, how do I, like, should I just be doing this now? Because couldn't I possibly very much, you know, have this as in like the extra belly fat or whatever, is that one of the symptoms that I could be experiencing because I am, or we're talking about this particular demographic, this age. So it's almost like if I was like 30 or 20, I'd be like, well, yeah, I'm not really probably going through that right now. But because you're 40 or 40 plus, like it seems more like, is this something that I'm like also, why shouldn't I just also be looking at that, I guess?
Yeah.
So I don't know how to answer that sometimes because it's a good question.
It is a great question, and I just always come back to the idea that that stuff might help, but it's not going to solve it. Like taking an
Right.
estrogen patch is not going to make you lose your belly fat. It makes you more
Mm.
insulin sensitive, but that stuff is there. Like you're not going to magically get rid of belly fat just because you've got an estrogen patch.
So this is like another really important thing. And I know we can
Yeah.
but I don't, I do not want to forget to talk about this at some point because I think there's just a lot. Once you start going down after you've written it down, I think people immediately sort of go to that. Like, oh, I'm going to put the estrogen patch on, or I'm going to take metformin, or I'm going to take a GLP-1 or whatever. And and then it will just go away. And I think that it doesn't necessarily work like that. I just think the mechanics, I think like the science behind it's really important for people to understand. Like if you get in that car and you go down that highway, you'll be on a highway, but I'm not sure it's exactly the destination that you're looking for.
That's
They
it.
just don't, like, and myself included, like I'm,
Yeah.
there's so much I know, but this is still one of these, these sort of lanes, if you will, that
Yeah.
is like, oh, like if I get in that car, where am I actually going to go? And is it going to give me this thing? Because no one wants to feel when they've been working hard, to feel like uncomfortable when they put their pants on or uncomfortable when they're looking at
No.
the Zoom. I get that when they really do feel like they're making some commitment to their health. So, I think, but I do think that there is a real, I believe that the majority of us are not keeping journals and are not really scrutinizing what we're eating. And I say that not to make people neurotic, but to make you totally aware
Yeah.
and then take that information to the estrogen patch freeway or to the
Yeah.
metformin freeway or
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
GLP-1 freeway.
What I will say with metformin is that for someone who is insulin resistant and they've been prescribed it, I mean, that's a conversation with them and their doctor. As a weight loss drug, like actually what we know about metformin is that it reduces your adaptations and therefore you don't build muscle as well. That's a known side effect of metformin. It used to be a bit of a favorite in that longevity scene. Like all of the
Mm-hmm.
gurus were taking it because of its potential to help improve longevity and health span. And then the studies started coming out showing its impact on muscle. So hey, it might lower your insulin, but that would also potentially impact on your anabolic ability to sort of build, which, hey, we're all about building a better physique, aren't we? Or
We
that's
are.
why we do strength training. Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So
And
really, if I'm weight loss resistant, then it most likely has to do with just that I first, very, 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 very first step just needs to be tending to, a very, very, very close look and a very specific look at exactly what you're eating.
yeah.
Everything.
And I know that people are like, I don't have time for this, but actually it's all about priorities. And I know this sounds really blunt, but it's true. Like
Mm-hmm.
because you are placing such an importance and I'm totally there with you. You place such an importance on your health and also how you want to feel and how you want
Yep.
to look, then this is actually this is the groundwork. And there are so many other reasons why you could be weight loss resistant. And I sort of mentioned it earlier, like, with biomarkers, with thyroid, with low vitamin D, low B12, low iron, all of these things could be
Mm.
playing into this inability for your metabolism to be working in a way that allows you to drop body fat. But first, let's look at the basics, because sometimes we clamber over the basics to get to that thing we think is going to be the magic bullet. And
Mm.
we've ignored all of this other stuff.
It's I mean, I love to just like, I think that's a really good place to just kind of like hold, like
Yeah.
put the brakes on first. I literally see that you and I are like in a car, we're cruising down, like we're doing a fun road trip, Mickey and Jess, and this is the first stop, right?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I think the next stops are worthy to look at. But I just think people immediately assume, and I will say this demographic of women that are quote
Yeah.
unquote of age of perimenopause, I've never heard yet somebody to me say every time that they're like, I cannot lose this, you know, belly fat, it's never any of the things you just said. It's never
Mm.
like, oh, I haven't really got my like biomarkers, like,
Yeah.
vitamin D or none of that. None of
Yeah.
that. It is
Yeah.
100% of the time, it's hormones. It must be my hormones. And so, like, do, I maybe, but maybe it's also this. It's just important. You've enlightened me because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was one of that, and I'm like, yeah, it's definitely hormones.
Yeah. And the thing is that it could well be affecting your hormones as well.
Mm.
It's all related. That like these are
Like, what
not
came
things
first,
in
the chicken or the
isolation.
egg? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
the reality is I mean, you can measure your hormones, but actually that's not what's used to sort of determine. That doesn't really tell you a lot, like in perimenopause. Of course, it tells you when you've gone through menopause, but and some doctors do look at like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone to get an indication, but your estrogen is all over the place. So I think getting back to basics at that point, that's sort of where you start. And of course we can talk about all the other things. We've already sort of talked about them, but like I think something else which would be a really good topic of conversation is like alcohol for women of our age. And
Mm-hmm.
I love a drink. And it's one of the things which is every and it's that navigating your um the potential consequences of enjoying a drink, and what does that mean for things like your sleep and your stress and all in your mood and the rest of things. So that's another podcast, but super interesting combo.
So many interesting comments, but I think, I think we're calling it like it is, and I think that people, weight resist. What did you say? Like, you know,
Weight loss
um,
resistant.
weight loss resistance is huge. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It just really is. At the end of the day, that does matter to people, and not
Yeah.
that their whole worth is tied up to the number on a scale. People, that's not at all what we're saying. I just think it's frustrating, and they want to be able to like have a little bit of control over something, and that's just part of being in like having responsibility of your health, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Totally. And how you
but
feel, and that's the important thing.
and how you feel, that is the important thing.
Nice one,
First stop on
Jess.
our road trip.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, you have a lovely evening, and we'll just pick this up where we left off for next time.
I love it. I can't wait.
Amazing.
Happy strength renewed.
Yeah. See you guys.